episode 6 of 20, connecting authentic PBL with your team of educators. When do you buy your iPhone? Do you camp out because you know it's coming? Do you wait 3 days so there's no line? Do you wait a couple months so they can work out the bugs? Do you wait a year? Are you like, mine's fine for now. I'm going to wait till I run out of memory. Or maybe you still have a flip phone. Wherever you're at on the innovation curve, know that it's fine. It's normal. It's where you're at. The innovation curve really meant for technology and how we accept technology. But we've found in our work over the last decade that it fits people really well. And how they accept that technology seems to be how we also accept educational initiatives or some kind of change. So we think that every administrator can shift their school to PBL without losing their team with these three considerations. The first one is going to be the innovation curve. We want you to consider your staff. What do they need to start making the PBL shift? When you look at the innovation curve, let's look at it with curriculum, for instance. So if you introduce a new curriculum, you'll have some training, and then you're going to say, go. And you've got innovators at the first end of that innovation curve that are going to run with it, and they're going to springboard off of it, right? And do more than it calls for. You've got some first followers that are going to run with it. They'll do some of the things the innovators do. You've got early adopters that are going to follow it just like it says. They're going to go boom, 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 page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They'll do all the things that it asks them to do. The late adopters are going to do some of it, but they want to see what happens with the early majority to say, is this really going to be good for kids? They're going to lag just behind just a little bit. And you're going to say, what's going on? How come we're not doing this? Well, it's because they want to see what's happening. They might want to wait for the curriculum company to have those trainings, right? If they've got 5 virtual trainings, they're waiting for those trainings to really, before they jump in fully. And then you've got laggards that are going to do kind of whatever they want and then make it look like they're doing that curriculum. So everybody's going to implement that curriculum at a different speed and really in a different way. And you can probably think through your staff to think who's going to be where. Well, the same thing happens with project-based learning. When we get a group of administrators from a district and sit them down and run this activity, we'll give them the innovation curve and say, just put your staff where they're going to be when you bring project-based learning in. Because it can actually be different innovation-wise based on what it is you're bringing in. So we talk specifically about project-based learning. Who's going to be your innovator? Who are the ones that you could just give them the book and they're going to run and start to implement? Who's the group that's going to say, I want training, and then I'm totally in. I want you to send me to this training so I can bring it to my learners. And then in that late majority is going to be, I want to see some success stories in our school before we get started. They might want a school visit, but they also want to see like this is going to work, and they're going to want training. And then you're going to have laggards. They're going to say, I don't know if this really works for our kids. And you're going to give them something, right? Like, because we take all these folks into a training, right? Into a PBL jumpstart. That's our 3-day training for teachers. And what we do with the laggards is we say, okay, could you bring in a community partner to your traditional unit to get started, right? So everybody can move somewhere for building skills. That's why we don't do curriculum, because you've got a fair amount of your teachers that are just going to ignore the curriculum anyway and do what they've always done, or just do the parts that they're used to. But when you're building skill sets, everybody moves up. Now they move at different paces, right? So if you're expecting your late adopters to jump in right away, they need different supports. And that's what part of this episode is about. So do you have early adopters who may already be using some components of PBL? You probably do, right? You probably have some people that maybe on the whole side of the spectrum that have brought in a community partner like outside of career day. That one doesn't really count because it doesn't have the full context of the content that you're trying to engage your learners in. They're not really solving a real problem. So who brings in the zoologist just because it's a great idea? Who brings in Uncle Tom, who's an architect? Like who does those types of things already and point those things out? Who's doing some workshopping, or maybe it's stations in your school, right? Like there are some PBL moves that are likely happening throughout your school. So find those people. And those might be some of your early adopters. Like, hey, I see what you're doing. It works really well for your learners. Do you want to do some more? I'm going to send a group to the school to go see what project-based learning looks like. Do you want to be in that group? Or I'm doing a book study. Do you want to jump in? And likely they do. So you can map out the innovation curve and see where your folks are going to be at. So like, who are the first 5 to 10 folks that you want to tap on the shoulder? Like you might tell everybody in the faculty meeting, say, hey, we're going to start exploring this learning team with the project-based learning. Who wants to be on this team? And you might get 1 or 2 hands, but you let everybody know, and then you go tap people on the shoulder, right? And say, hey, you're doing this neat thing in your classroom. I think this might be good for you. Are you interested in testing it out? And they'll likely say yes. That happens all the time when it's an honor, right? To get the extra tap on the shoulder and say, I think this might be for you. So you also are going to have some resistors on the back end of that innovation curve. So what do you do with those resistors? You probably need a plan for that. What we do and what we recommend is that you have them make some kind of a step, right? You could have them just go through the motions of a PBL unit, and that's helpful, right? You just want to be careful that they don't just call it PBL if it's not really PBL, right? But they could always, again, start with an entry event, even if it's a traditional unit. They could bring in a community partner for that. If they're doing traditional presentations, why not bring in an authentic audience? Doesn't really require a whole lot of extra work for those resistors, and they can start to see the fruits of that labor. You can also have resistors come into other classrooms that are within your school so they can see it working in your real world environment. Because I can give you the research, but those resistors will say, yeah, but it doesn't quite fit my school. Yeah, but it doesn't quite fit my subject area. There's always a yeah, but connected to that. But when you start showing them other teachers that are in your school with the same learners that are in your school, some of the excuses start to go away. You can get more people on board. So when you look at the innovation curve, you'll see where people are at, when they want to jump in. And the third piece we really want you to think about is what kind of training and resources will support your teachers best. What do each of these groups on the innovation curve, what does each team member need to thrive in this PBL shift? You're going to think about this in your visioning stage as you're looking forward. And when we look at it, we look at a 3-day jump start over the summer and then coaching throughout the year. That coaching is a time for your staff to ask questions, to get help from us. And then we're going to give them resources and things that have worked in the past for other schools and say, oh, yeah, that could work. Right. And they know that next month we're going to be in there again. Right. Or maybe we'll do an in-person with you. Whatever you need is what we do. But they have that support to know that my entry event could have gone better. I can't wait. I'm going to talk to Rochelle about that at our next coaching meeting. And that support's really important for some people on innovation curve. For some people, they're just going to run. They're just going to run and do it, and they're going to reflect, and they're going to get better, and that's going to work for them. Some people are definitely going to want those supports. So you want to look at who needs what as you're launching this vision. I've got one more book for you. Are you ready? Life's a Project, the 6 A's of Project-Based Learning. This one's written by Andrew Larson, who's a PBL certified facilitator, and he's a 25-year veteran. About half of that he was teaching traditionally. He's one of those that said, wow, PBL is the way I've always wanted to teach. And he lays out his pathway through stories. So he takes some pretty deep PBL concepts in the 6 A's, which is where we really define high project-based learning. And he connects those to stories. And he gives you his classroom stories. If assessment is something that you're really concerned about as you move to project-based learning, like what will assessment look like and how will we have good data? This is really the book for you. I think Andrew is an expert on project-based learning and assessment together specifically. His chapter, it's a little bit longer, but that's because it's super in depth, right? So we published this book with him because we're so excited about the work. And that's one that we'll put in the show notes. We did create a book study for it as well, so you can invite some more of your teachers into it. And I think they'll love the practicality of the stories that are in it, as well as the key and deep PBL ideas. Now you have a plan to help your staff stay informed and engaged in the PBL shift. What about students and families? I'll see you in the next episode.